I think everyone does this when they look at the 10 ox herding pictures. You try and peg yourself somewhere on it.
And you should.
And you should?
Yeah.
That's not a mistake to do.
It's not a mistake because that's what it's about. I mean, it's a very clever device.
Today's video is very special because we are having the very first guest on this YouTube channel, and the guest is a very eminent person. I hugely respect them. It is Mujyo from the Perth Jizuan Zen Center. Mujyo is the priest there, and I've been visiting the Zen Center for quite a few years. I can definitely say Mujyo is a very wise person, very knowledgeable about so many things. You can have a huge variety of different discussions with him. He is a polymath for sure. And relevant to today, he is also a fantastic painter. Really, the whole Zen Center is filled with beautiful paintings that he has done. In particular, he has what to me is the most beautiful rendition of the 10 ox herding pictures, which is a very famous story that is expressed in the Zen tradition. It is a story that expresses the entire spiritual process. The story that goes from being totally lost with spirituality to complete enlightenment. Now, me and Mujyo talk about the deeper meanings and symbolism of the 10 ox herding pictures, which will happen very soon. But before we start with this short interview that I do with Mujyo, I just quickly want to say what these 10 ox herding pictures actually are. So the very first picture is a picture of a boy who is lost in the woods. Not much idea what is going on. In the second picture, this boy sees some footprints in the soil. The footprints of an ox. But he doesn't really know what the ox looks like. However, it intrigues him. So he follows the footprints. And then in the third picture we see a tail of an ox. Just a glimpse of the ox. So the boy sees that there is actually something making these footprints, but he doesn't know exactly what it is. In the fourth picture, this boy is now wrestling with the big, strong ox. There's quite a fight going on with the ox, and the boy's trying to tame it. A big task for a little boy to tame a big ox. But then we see in the fifth picture that the boy is walking next to the ox and actually leading it. Very interesting. The boy has accomplished something very significant. Then in the sixth picture, the boy is actually now riding the ox. He is riding it backwards even. He's playing a flute in Mujyo's rendition, so the boy is relaxed, having fun, enjoying life. Then, in the seventh painting, actually there is no ox, and all we see is the picture of the boy's home. Now it gets more abstract. This is where you can really think deeply about what do these pictures mean. That's the purpose of the paintings. It's to convey deep meaning that's hard to express with words. But the eighth picture is, of course, a very famous image in the Zen tradition. I will say, for the purposes of this short introduction, it is a picture of emptiness. Then in the ninth painting, we see a picture of the hills, a stream, and what you can call the source of us. Where do we come from? And where do we go? And then in the final painting, the 10th one, it is a picture of a Buddhist, you could say, or a teacher, or a monk, whatever you want to call it, a wise person that has gone through this whole process, and he is now serving the world. So there you go. That is what the pictures actually are in their short version. But now me and Mujyo will talk about this a little bit more deeply. And I really do want to thank him from a genuine heart. I really appreciate that he's the very first guest on this channel. I couldn't hope for anyone better. He's a lovely person to talk to, and if you live in Perth or ever visit Perth, I highly encourage you to go to the Juzoan Zen Center and perhaps sit with me and Mujyo in a Zazen session.
Yeah, different people at different stages in their lives are going to identify with where they, where maybe they are. And, someone might come along and say, "Yeah, I'm the first character in the narrative who's completely lost, that doesn't know where the ox is at all, has no idea whatsoever." And then somebody else might feel, well, I have a bit more of a glimpse, I have the footprints, I have the track of this, etc. Different people have different sense of where they are. But then again, we have the self-bias too, and we may, be telling ourselves that we're a little bit further down than we actually are.
Riding the ox backwards every day.
Sorry?
We might be telling ourselves we're riding the ox backwards every day.
Yes, maybe so. Yeah. And of course the ox is a metaphor for your mind, yeah? I think that's important to mention, by the way, yeah. It's not about a literal ox, it's about, the ox that represents your mind, yeah? Chasing after your mind, chasing after truth. So yeah, everybody goes through some stage of, the rank beginner or the person who feels that, they've lost the plot, or they don't know where what does truth even look like. It's completely lost.
What might take someone from this state of complete lostness to seeing a footprint? Do you think it's just luck, just happenstance?
There is a little bit of luck, but I think there's a lot of desperation. I mean, it's again, this is another aspect of the metaphor of the boy seeking the lost animal, from the farm. The animal is precious. It's a precious asset to the farm, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. You can imagine 1,000 years ago. You lose an ox. That's a big problem for you, and well, you lose your sense of spiritual, mental agency. That's a big problem for you. That's an equally desperate kind of situation to be in. You're going to want to run out and find that thing before your father finds out, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And if we apply that to the mind, hopefully, you could be expressing that kind of desperation to regain agency yourself. Yeah.
Regain agency, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think that's another definition of enlightenment, when people are, to put this in, the language of Buddhism into something attainable for us in modern English. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment is your agency in the world. Yeah. If you haven't got enlightenment, you haven't got agency. If you haven't got agency, you haven't got enlightenment, right? That's that is by definition what Buddhism is talking about. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I'm always hesitant myself to define enlightenment, but that's an interesting definition.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I'm talking about. So,
define what is someone's agency. That also comes down to the individual and how they feel, etc. Well, what do you feel? What is this sense of something missing in your life, etc., or something that's, or your sense of fulfillment in your life? What is that? Define that. You can't. Well, but if we call it agency, it's as good a word as Buddha nature. It's same.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have a boy that's a bit lost, but he finds some footprints, and maybe he doesn't even know what it's for, but naturally he sees there's something unusual, and he follows it, and then if I remember correctly, he sees just perhaps the oxes going behind some trees.
Yeah, the ox in the distance. Yeah,
he just sees a glimpse, maybe the tail of the ox.
Yeah, and these are two interesting stages because they're both give some idea of a progress, in a sense. But there's also the problem that you may kind of go, oh, I see the tracks are old, the trail is old, it's cold, it's stale, I'll give up. Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's a possibility in life. But I will, having seen how far ahead of me it is, I might give up. The same thing when you see the glimpse of the ox, you might say, well, I've seen it. Do I really have to catch it? Or, am I forever going to stay at this distance behind it, etc. So, yeah, there's interesting things going on there. That's in everybody's life. Are you, are you totally missing your mind? Are you tracking it? Are you happy to say, well, it's gone, it's bolted, and give up there in your life? Or are you happy to say, well, I've seen the ox at least, but at least I've seen it at a distance and happy to give up there? At any one of these stages you could mistake for being the ends until the means themselves. Yeah?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is why it's useful to know there is more stages you might not even realize that you can go further.
That's right. So you start to catch the ox. Well, now you've got a sweet problem, haven't you? What are you going to do with this? Yeah.
Of course, as you can see in the beautiful painting, it's very wild, strong, and big.
Yeah, as it is. It is in all of us. Wild, strong, and big, the mind.
If you get the noose around its neck, do you have it, or does it have you?
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily want to be. It doesn't necessarily want to be tamed, and it wants its freedom, and etc. Once again, you could lose you could lose grip of that string. You could lose grip of that noose that you catch it with, or whatever. Again,
motivation maybe in life.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the taking it home, returning it home, leading the ox. And there's the possibility of false sense of achievement in that. There's a false sense of achievement in that. And yet, you know, you actually haven't still got it taken as home. Yeah.
Okay. To me, it seems like a very big leap going from, like, maybe this is, of course, this is just my interpretation, but I see it like that moment when you're realizing in meditation you can't count to 10 without getting distracted, and you really see how unruly your mind is. And going from that to a mind that is just walking beside you, that you are leading, it seems like a very big step.
Yeah, it's not overnight. It's not overnight. It'd be nice if it was as easy as the ox herding pictures in many ways, and yet at the same time it is. But yeah, it's not an overnight project. You're, you know, you are undertaking a big project. Yeah. Yeah.
If we wanted to be more accurate, the boy might be a man by the end, an old man.
We'll get to that, I suppose. Yeah. And then the next one is the boy riding the ox, you know, and then he has in this case I painted him with a flute. He has a sense of command over agency. Yeah, there's a sense of command over agency, command over mind, a sense of that, but it's still not returned home yet. Yeah, so the job's still not quite done. No matter how good it looks, how clever you look, job's still not quite done. Yeah.
Okay.
And
does the flute show some symbolism of playfulness and joyfulness?
Yeah. A sense that you can play with your mind, and that's a dangerous stage as well. You'll fall off. You know, he can still become deluded that he is in command, etc. It's still not without its own danger, etc. We have to, I think, acknowledge in spiritual life that all the time, you know, the ability for self-bias is always there. It's always there. It's always a potential, a great potential. Yeah. And then the next one after that, of course, is there's no ox at all. The ox has been transcended. The mind has been transcended. The need for agency has been transcended. Yeah, after we've caught it and taken it home, it has been transcended. Yeah, and this is where this also, you know, has its, you know, people will think, well, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to get to there. You know, if I get to there, I'll be happy, maybe. But that's still not yet complete. Yeah. Hence, it's not quite at the end yet. Yeah. Even in the six ox pictures, that was not the end. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The transcendency of the mind, the transcendency of agency.
It does, to me, my interpretation now begin to feel like that's enlightenment, or if someone's communicating it, the ox vanishing. Seems very deep indeed. Like, obviously that's the purpose of these paintings, to convey something that's difficult to convey, but it's hard to imagine for us what that would be, the mind or the ox really being home and not there.
Yeah, but it's not quite enlightenment. It's not really fully there yet. And even the next panel, you know, the next two panels, you know, complete transition. Yeah, complete transition, and then returning to the source of all things,
May I ask, with the painting, the ninth one seems more abstract. What is it exactly a painting of? A fountain?
Mountains
Mountains.
and a pagoda.
Pagoda?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know pagoda, yeah.
And the river, and perhaps I put a sailboat in there. It's the tributary. Yeah. Rivers flow back into the source of themselves. Yeah. They come from lakes. They return to the big lake, the ocean. Yeah. Ultimately, returning to the source. Yeah. Again, that's that's what we must ultimately do, or almost ultimately, and finally, going back into the world. And I think in many ways this is the most important panel of the 10 Ox-30 pictures, because look, many people in spirituality think that, well, there is the trap, and expressed further back, the trap that you can get into, that if I'm okay, that's what's important. That your zazen, your meditation, is about making yourself okay, etc. And of course, actually, real spiritual awakening, whatever your tradition, wherever you come from, real spiritual awakening is in what can you do in the world with this? How is it useful? What does it do? What do you do? How do you live thereafter? This is this is not necessarily good enough to say, well, I'm okay. I go and sit on my cushion and become okay. What do you do in the world? How does that change? How do you contribute in the world from this? And that gives real relevance to the whole narrative. Yeah, a real maturity. Yeah.
And could I be right in saying that what might take you from being totally lost to seeing some footprints is perhaps some kind of someone just doing something good, like talking about the Dharma, talking about spirituality, and then if you hear something like that, that can be the footprints? I'm just trying to make a nice circle.
Yeah. But basically, at the beginning, and for a long time, there's an innate selfishness in spiritual journey. We tend to think there's not. We tend to think we're trying to overcome our selfishness, but actually, it's a somewhat selfish thing to go, I'm going to pay attention to my spiritual life, because that requires you to tunnel vision somewhat, and it's a fair criticism that people who don't feel that they have a spiritual life and they're not interested in the spiritual life, it's a fair criticism that those people have of other people who do, because you may kind of go, well, I've got my thing, whatever it is that I spiritually do. In this case, you can make Zen into a very selfish thing if you wish to. And I've met some people who sit well on the cushion, and yet they don't function well as human beings off the cushion. You know, and they may have you may have decades of experience of sitting, but if it's if you can't translate it into the real world, well, I don't know. It's been wasted decades, maybe. You know, you hate to say that someone can waste their effort, but if you don't transcend the selfishness that, quite frankly, started you in the first place in your spiritual journey, there is a selfish element to realizing that you need to have a spiritual life. There is a somewhat. This is a paradox, yeah.
What's coming to my mind is, or very strongly, is can I call him the original Buddha or Gautama Buddha? Because many people still criticize him for being so selfish that he left his family a newly born child.
Yeah, and it's fair.
Yeah, you can see the argument.
Yeah,
then,
you know, to meet him, maybe he's not a very nice guy, actually. At the very, you know, on that level, and certainly at the beginning, you could, and that's all of us. You know, who's doing the criticizing? Yeah, who's doing the saying? You know, who's saying? Who is asking? Who is asking this question? Well, all of us are, you know, in order to have to. Yeah, it'd be hard to think of a way to do spirituality unselfishly, unless you're literally just doing charity work, but then that maybe it's not even spirituality. Yeah, well, but maybe this story sort of promotes the idea that you're being selfish, but your ultimate goal is to give back and help the world. Yeah. And I think this is, this is the important development of Rinzai Zen in developing that idea, which, you know, it comes from Chinese sensibility about civil life. Civil life is terribly important in Chinese culture, and, you know, but Buddhism in China would develop in that direction of, you know, perhaps this is, you know, I don't want to criticize Indian Buddhism too much. You know, there can be people who are very attached to Indian Buddhism, and, you know, Indian Buddhism is very developed.
Like Vajrayana, you mean?
Yeah, and well, no, just in general. In general, Indian Buddhism is very developed. You know, but perhaps the contribution of Chinese culture to Buddhism as it grew into China is its civil ethic, which is not. It's not that that's not there in original Buddhism either. You know, there are mentions of Sakyamuni Buddha, the Venerable Sakyamuni Buddha, teaching things and which are very civilly based. In fact, you know, very ethic based, etc. Not, you know, he wasn't just walking around the Indian countryside saying, "Follow me, because, you know, if you follow me, you know, you will be saved." He had he had more message than that, definitely. But in Chinese Buddhism, perhaps that message is developed even more and more and more. And certainly that's a feature of Rinzai Zen. By the Sung dynasty, it's a fully developed idea of that you return to the world to to demonstrate your awakening. Otherwise, it's not true awakening. It's if you can't demonstrate it, it's still not true. Yeah. Yeah. When you train in Rinzai Zen, you must say you must show to the Roshi that you can show what you're talking about. Yeah. You must be able to demonstrate it, not just come to the Sanzen room with an idea.
Ideas are not enough.
Ideas are not enough.
Maybe even an obstacle.
Yeah, and nearly surely always an obstacle. And certainly not just your own self-development. Yeah? Your own self-development for just yourself is still selfish. Yeah. If it never goes beyond. Yeah.
Right.